us were originally attracted into the field. So we were developing stuff for Honda, GM OnStar. If you ever press the button, that was our systems behind the scenes as well. But we wanted to get it out to you faster because you weren't buying cars but once every 7 years, and by the time you got it, it wasn't fast enough. And so we started placing our work, our multimodal interfaces and early speech recognition and the like, into places like Miami Children's Hospital. And by the way, when the surgeon was asked by either an ABC News or a CNBC reporter, you know, how do you keep up with the state of the art? He had the most surgeon answer ever, which is, I am the state of the art. On the right side was Wake Forest University. We actually hid it on their campuses where students can ask, where is the shuttle bus? And because co-eds are too lazy to go down the hallway to find out if the washer and dryer are free, they just used our tools to do that. And I even hid it in Epcot Center in Walt Disney World because I wanted to see how it would deal with impacted speakers. These are early AI assistants. What is an impacted speaker? A child, right? You know, so you had to essentially articulate an application that met their grade level, their comprehension level. But I also joked it was also for the impacted speakers that were amateurs that would go left instead of right and do Mexico first instead of Canada, which is a really bad idea. So figuring out how drunks would use AI assistants, early AI assistants, was important to me. Now, I got quoted in this Popular Mechanics article, and they're like, Igor, what's something that you have that the rest of us don't have yet? I'm like, well, I can talk to my television. You know, that's something that I have. But then I got annoyed because it's hard for you to see on the bottom left. It says May of 2005. And I'm like, holy smokes, I'm not going to wait 20 years where I'm Professor X in a wheelchair talking to my television. I already have this in the lab. So it was frustrating me to try to figure out how to get this stuff out as fast as possible. Now, the business executive who's currently the CEO of AMD was leading a secret project for us at IBM that had Sony working on it and Toshiba working on it and ourselves. And I ran to that and I said, hey, let's put a microphone on it. Everybody laughed. They're like, nobody's going to allow a microphone in their house. And then I said, oh my gosh, put a microphone and we'll send their voices to the cloud. It'll have much higher accuracy. Everybody laughed. Nobody's going to allow their voice to go somewhere they can't see. And in year 3, I said, record it here, send it there, and in less than a second, I can answer any question any human being has about anything. By then, they were falling out of their chairs with milk shooting out of their noses. It appeared so impossible. And so like Cartman from South Park, I said, screw you guys, I'm going home. And stood up the last company, right? That wasn't me saying that. That was Cartman saying that. Stood up the last company because innovation always finds a way, and we stood up the last company. Now, if any of you have ever seen HBO's comedy Silicon Valley, they lampooned a conference called TechCrunch Disrupt. Well, this is, so the thing that I tried getting it onto, by the way, ended up becoming the PlayStation 3. And so this conference was lampooned. It was called TechCrunch Disrupt. And this is me pulling a Razr flip phone out of my pocket, and I spoke into it. This was in 2007. What people didn't know at the time is we were secretly working with Apple on Siri before the iPhone even existed. That's why at times they get a bad rap that they're not early on AI, and I'm like, you don't realize they're actually working on it for a very, very long period of time. It's just that they want to do it in a responsible way, an ethical way, you know, in a compute-sensitive way as well, with privacy, security, and things of that sort. I even got annoyed when the military was sending these things called phraselators into Iraq at that time, which were finite domain recognition, where you had to memorize everything instead of allowing it to users on both sides to say anything that they wanted. By the way, I can't confirm or deny, you know, what other agencies were interested in this work as well, but I can't impinge the freedom of speech of TALs, otherwise that would be a Taliban. And you don't want to scare them out of your organizations because you may have a WikiLeak. By the way, since we're only a day away from Father's Day, I thought you needed that nested dad joke. And then as was stated in the introduction, 5 years after that picture was taken, we get acquired on the down low by Amazon as their first AI-related acquisition, and that's how Alexa was born. Alexa's my older sister's name, which is a coincidence, but the code name for it was Pryon, and that's what I currently use for this company name. So we started thinking, hey, let's start creating next-gen interfaces for pulling all the world's knowledge onto a single pane of glass, and let's go ahead and capture our own football, right? Because natural language is going to be coming to more serious workplaces, academic environments, government agencies, critical infrastructure, and the like. And 7 years ago, everybody was laughing at me like Beavis and Butthead when I was saying that. They're like, no, people are going to have form-based interfaces and things of that sort. So they snickered 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, ChatGPT comes out, everybody's quiet. Now, the thing that I wanted to solve is loosely described as knowledge friction. All of you, feel that in your respective organizations, because what do you have? You have critical information that's trapped all over your organizations. Right? Think about when we were, when people were educating us. What was the mantra that they used to us day in and day out? Knowledge is power, knowledge is power, knowledge is power. But they forgot the next piece. Knowledge visibility is a superpower. Your organizations have all sorts of knowledge strewn about in various systems of record, right? What are these? Audio, video, images, text, PowerPoints, PDFs, Word file, web pages, and SharePoints, and Google Drives, and Confluence, and they're the 4 Ps. Public information you trust from other academic institutions, other government institutions, publish information that you're licensing in from Elsevier and others, proprietary stuff unique to your organizations, and personal items unique to you as individuals. What are they? Patents, research papers, experimental information, export controls information, resumes and CVs for rapid response teams, all manners of technical documentation, developer documentation, employee handbooks, and things of that sort. They're all over the place. Now, how did you try to solve it? Well, through web search, but you're not going to access confidential assets that way. Enterprise search, you log into every app and you get a little search bar and it barfs out a list of links every time you type in keywords there. Chatbots are fragile at scale. Go ahead and try to talk to your airline right now. Literally right now. Go talk to your hotel brand. Go talk to your bank, and you see that it's still an undiscovered interface because these things are fragile because of entity intent modeling. And then there's a whole mess of fragmented startups that are showing up trying to solve AI, but they're no better than you going into an AutoZone and trying to build a car from auto parts. But everybody wants to solve AI, right? Now, what is AI? I'll oversimplify it. It's just software that's trying to mimic what a human can do, right? If I went to you and said, hey, I need something translated from here to there, you get an interpreter. If I tell you, hey, you need to sort these pictures by which ones have cats and dogs, we can do that manually. All AI does is it tries to automate a human process already. Now, what is machine learning? All right, now let's use algorithms in order to do that. What is the deep learning stuff? Well, let's try to mimic more the way that our brains actually work in these as well. What is NLP? Well, let's try to have organic workflows, right? Things like machine translation, speech recognition. What is computer vision? It's just trying to mimic one of our senses as well. And each of these things has obviously different methods associated with them as well. Don't worry, there won't be an exam on this later. But the thing that really turned it into a renaissance over the course of the last couple of years or so and thereabouts is the transformer architecture. Now, these large language models, as you know them, again, they're mimicking human processes. They're even turning into multimodal large language models now. But don't worry about it. You can eat an apple and use 20 watts to write a haiku. Every time you type something into one of these GPT-style systems, it's using the same amount of energy as keeping one of these light bulbs on for 30 minutes just to write that haiku. So they're very energy inefficient as well. Now, this is a trick question. How do you get from a language model and turn it into a large language model? So how do you turn a little dot into a giant dot? I'll try again. Little dot, language model, SLM, small language model, into big data. Well, you steal a whole bunch of copyrighted information. That's how you do that. And then you wonder why they don't have AI ethicists anymore. So what's the path to large language models? Everybody thinks over the last couple of years they just discovered the new world. They might as well be Christopher Columbus thinking that they discovered a continent with no people in it, when this is something that has been brewing for decades. And of course, there doesn't go a week where somebody doesn't announce a new LLM, and I know everybody can get cross-eyed trying to figure out, what's the benefit of one versus another one. Ultimately, these things will just get commoditized. Now, I'm also going to give you a metaphor for framing what you hear as GPT versus RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. Now, I'm not going to walk you through all the stages of how these things happen. I'll make it simple. In this example, the cow turns into a hamburger. The cow turns into a hamburger in this example. In this example, with Retrieval Augmented Generation, the cow turns into a veggie burger. And you're like, what? How did that happen? How does a cow turn into a veggie burger? Well, the cow, which represents the LLM, is only used to model language, right? So it models the creation of a patty, but the vegetables that create the veggie burger come from your enterprise software and resources. So it's connectors and integrations with your SharePoints, with your Confluence, with the patent office and things of that sort, and that's what synthesizes the answer. Now I have one of our investors who's a Texan, and after I gave him this metaphor, he's like, why the heck would I want the veggie burger? Right? Which is a proper question for a Texan, and I retorted back, so you don't get bird flu. Now, what is Gen AI? It obviously fills in blanks, but how does that work? Well, let me make it simple for you. For things like these video creators or image makers, I know they appear magical where you type in some words and it goes and makes you a picture of, in this case, a sunflower, but it actually works backwards. That's how it's trained. So it starts with the words and the picture, and what you do is you add one layer of static. And the AI gets a Scooby snack if it finds its way back to the clean image. And then you add 2 layers of static, and it gets 2 Scooby snacks if it finds its way back. Three layers, 3 Scooby snacks when it finds its way back. And that's how these things are trained. And of course, you have some platforms like the Adobe platform that are trying to properly utilize images that they're licensed, but there's others that get in trouble when they build these models out. Now, these are interesting for what? Creative style pursuits. But you gotta be careful, right? Because everybody thinks that they're turning into artists. They're not. We all have cameras on our iPhones that didn't make Steven Spielberg obsolete, right? Because artists don't give you what you want. When you type in a prompt, the AI gives you what you want. Artists give you what you need, and that subtle distinction that's human people oftentimes miss. Now, are there any risks with Gen AI? Yeah, maybe there's 21 risks, right? From hallucinations to willful deception to all sorts of issues. And we'll take some highlights. Frequent hallucinations, all of you have seen this. Here's what you have to understand about these style of consumer AIs, right? Don't you have friends and family members that are physicians and attorneys, and every time they walk past a television set that has ER or Law & Order playing on it, they always groan and roll their eyes? Why? Because there's actors that are giving those lines. So these GPTs are acting like pilots, they're acting like analysts, they're acting like chemists and things of that sort. Don't give it any more provenance than that, right? Because your family members and friends would tell you, I would get disbarred, I would get sued for malpractice, I would kill the patient, that's absolutely the wrong thing in that jurisdiction, we would get arrested, all sorts of problems would happen if we used that information. So that's the hallucinations that we all know and love, and it's practically a drinking game. And we knew that, by the way. We knew that there was an alignment problem. When you dealt with Siris and Alexas, there's a reason why you can only do a couple turns. What's the weather today? How about tomorrow? That's 2 turns, right? Because around turn 7, they start going batty. Everybody knew that. And that's the alignment problem. Static training data, because they use a lot of data, in order to make these things. They have to recompile themselves. Even some of the latest models only have data as of late last year, and I'm pretty sure the world changed from Jan 1 up to this point. It's hard to update these things, whether they even accept any of the updates. So this thing keeps telling everybody that I'm born in different places every time you ask it. There's risk of data leakage, right? For many of your organizations that are working with very serious IP, you tell everybody what? Mitts off. Don't talk to ChatGPT. Don't talk to some of these things. You may be unintentionally leaking proprietary things and missions and what have you. And Samsung learned that the hard way. That's because their back end is RLHF oriented, reinforcement learning with human feedback, and maybe going overseas. You had issues where all of a sudden one of your vendors says, hey, we're changing the T's and C's, now we're gonna use your recordings or other type of objects stored on our SaaS platforms for training models to improve services for you, and you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. That changes some of the claims that we're making to our constituents and our partners. You can reverse engineer it. This is how some authors found their content in there. You can mask the proper nouns and then say, hey, fill in the blanks correctly, and if it does, then you know that your books and other writings were used as training data. A lack of per-user access controls, which is a non-starter for our investment, and all sorts of attacks. Prompt injection, supply chain, which is where the open source models live, like Hugging Face, adversarial attacks. You have all the issues with copyrights, obviously with images, with code, that are getting stripped attribution, right, for in open source scenarios. The fact that you can't copyright, obviously, only the stuff that's originated by humans can be copyrighted. In this case, it was the actual text of the story, but not the images for this graphic novel. And legal constraints. In some ways, people are euphoric about encountering some of these open source models, but when you read the fine print, they're like, hey, you can't use it in critical infrastructure, right? So they're unobtainium in some ways. It's sort of like Lucy pulling the ball from Charlie Brown constantly. Toxic responses. I don't think anybody willfully tries to make one of these things, so it's biased, politically biased in one direction or another. It's just the accident of whatever information that they're feasting on in open source land. And there's all sorts of issues associated with these things being monolithic. I already mentioned the energy consumption. And you do have model collapse, where once these things start eating pieces of themselves out there as output, as a lot of marketing teams are using these things to create copy, they actually do go crazy, similar to Pryon diseases, mad cow disease, and the like. Because remember, I said these things mimic biological processes. That also means the bad stuff. And then drifting models. In many scenarios, you want determinism. If you have this in a nuclear power plant, in a hospital, and things like that, and these style of models can't do that. And then some authors and creators are starting to poison their content in there as well. And then we have problems with corporate governance in terms of who's responsible for some of these faults. And there are sleeper cells that are being developed that you download one of these models, you can red team it, you can stress test it, your CISO can sign off on it. But then all of a sudden, what happens? It waits for some conditions, some time, or some other context, and then it starts giving perverted results on the other side. And then there's willful deception, where these things know that they're telling you the incorrect thing. That's because they're trying to serve some other objective function as well. Anywho, that wasn't the happy part of the talk, all right? It's sort of like act 2 of a movie. Now that you're like, oh no, they're never gonna be able to win. What's the happy ending? Well, we should all feel goosebumps, because we're also on the cusp of solving the Tower of Babel problem. That we're gonna have something in all of our respective organizations that's gonna be the agnostic to the human language that things are authored, recorded, or captured in. It's not gonna matter the underlying system of record that things are stored in, right? You don't have to displace any of your existing investments. You don't have to change how you author content, right? An AI is going to be continually reading from all of the existing sources that you have and create a knowledge cloud in the center of your respective organizations that will be able to communicate with all of your users no matter where they are, whether they want to pick up a phone line, talk to a digital human, a chatbot, or things of that sort. So it's a very exciting time for that. And why do you need to have something like this, right? A knowledge cloud. Well, here's why. The web, as you know, it died 2+ years ago. So you're going to have a system of truth, a system of systems of record at your core that you can firewall, to ensure only the proper assets get allowed in there, and you want to look for unintentional spill as well. Similar to how the Norwegians created a seed bank above the Arctic Circle of non-GMO seeds so that we can always recreate agriculture if we ever had to. So that's what's exciting. And you will have Admiral Poindexter's vision then of total information awareness when you get all of your internal and external assets into this core. Now, don't think that this is complicated, because while it appears complicated, like a Databricks, like a Palantir, like a Snowflake, it could be as easy to use as many of the consumer-style experiences that you already have at home. And to construct one of these things, a lot of the picks and shovel crowd are telling you that you have to fine-tune open source models or construct your own large language models. And it could be, in the future, as simple as hitting the plus sign, giving it a title. In this case, this is an HR specialist wanting to create one of these knowledge clouds to service their personnel. And then you just point to one or more sources of unstructured knowledge. It already and builds it in front of you. On the other side of this, you just start talking or typing to it. That's how we built the strategic intelligence AI for the World Economic Forum as an example. And it's that simple. Look, there's even confetti that falls out of the sky to remark that it's pretty simple to do. So in this case, though, you'll end up having something that when it gives you an answer, it gives you what you need, which is proper citations to source and methods so you know exactly why you're being told something, right? And that's what we need in some of the more serious environments that we operate. Now, relative to Alexa, I'm hoping this thing will be a more controlled environment. So that's why it was designed to go into more serious places. But I will take any quick questions or comments if you have any, since we have a couple moments. I think they have a microphone for us here in the center.
You talked a little bit about knowledge fatigue, and every day we're reading about AI. What can we do to better understand where we're at, and especially, I come in the tech sales side, how we can stay ahead of this, but more importantly, how can we help our customers when it comes to AI?
Yeah, I think in that case, one of the great use cases that we're seeing for these types of retrieval augmented generation tools is for sales enablement in some ways. And also think about this way. Right now, most of us, when we sell software, there's typically a myriad of different partners, but now you can unify it together, and now you can see upsell signals, you can see underperforming partners and things of that sort as well.
Thank you for the nice talk. And I watched the TED Talk from an educator in UK. I think his name called Ken Robertson. And he did mention, I think his talk called Do Schools Kill Creativity or Not? He did mention modern technologies will kill creativity. So what do you think about the AI? Will AI kill our creativity, and how to avoid that?
Yeah, that's a great question and a philosophical one at that. I don't think it'll kill creativity any more than other features that were added to our smartphones as well. Because think this way, even though you've driven by countless McDonald's in order to get here at the airport, on the side of the road and things like that, and yet there's still a place for 3-star Michelin chefs and also mom and pops that we gravitate towards. And those are the ones that we actually use as goalposts for the special times in our lives, that we're sharing with friends and family and colleagues and things of that sort. So there's a room for the industrialized creativity is what you're seeing with some of these AIs, but the things that are going to make your respective organizations be considered unique will always be handmade.
Yeah, you commented on the energy, but if you look at the projections, in 16 years, the energy of data will pass the world's energy production, so driven in large part by AI. So what do you think is going to happen as we move forward?
I mean, no pun intended, but this is a conference that literally is the necessity is the mother of invention, so we'll come up with something. I think Sam talking about $7 trillion for new forms of energy and new chips and stuff like that is utter nonsense when we can use $7 trillion to buy the people of the world food and water and shelter and things of that sort that would immediately change outcomes, all sorts of outcomes. But yeah, there's a lot to play here. AI is aesthetically beautiful. Do you know why? Of all the technical disciplines, it's the one where all backgrounds meet. It's like watching an opera. An opera is the pinnacle of art, classical art, because you have ballet and you have story and you have sights and sounds and how the audience is reacting and things of that sort. And that's what AI represents as well. So it requires influences from the humanities and technical field and politicians and things of that sort. That's why it's exciting. Thank you.